Morning, y'all. Chris Maxwell, the Eco Dweeb. I am in my brand new 2019 Hyundai Ioniq, and this morning we are going to take a road trip to Charlotte for an electric vehicle workshop for fleet managers. And we're going to showcase my vehicle to people who are looking to add electric vehicles to their fleet. And I think my car happens to be a really good fleet vehicle, or rental car, or really it's just a car. So, anyway, let's get on the road. So yeah, we have 139 miles of estimated range and 121, I believe it is, miles of driving to do today. And this car is rated for 124 miles combined. We are avoiding 85 on the way down. We will be taking 85 on the way home, most likely. The plan is we're going to drive US 64 to Salisbury, North Carolina. We'll take 64 to 85 and 85 into Salisbury. I'm going to plug the car in and let it charge at that station, which I went and checked a little over a week ago, and it is in operation, and someone else has used it since then. And once we get a 30-minute charge, which should put this car back up to around 90%, we'll head to Charlotte, and while the car charges, I plan to go eat at a Waffle House. So, EV road trip. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait. I'll check in with you on the road. First update. We have traveled 22.5 miles. We are averaging 5.1 miles per kilowatt hour in efficiency, and my range estimator is still at 126 miles. We have approximately 55 miles till we get to Asheboro. I'll cancel my nav there so that it'll route me to continue to take 64 up to 85, and then we'll take 85 into Salisbury. I am running the speed limit. I am kind of a stickler for running the speed limit in a car. I am running the speed limit, and this car does its best work below 70 miles an hour, but it'll still pull high fours at 70 miles an hour. I can easily get 4.1 running 70 miles an hour, keeping up with traffic. But I'm going for efficiency, so we're actually going to run the limit, not necessarily any slower, but the limit. And we're going to see how many miles remain when I get to the charger in Salisbury. Kind of excited. We've been driving for 1 hour. We have gone almost 51 miles. My efficiency is now 5.1 miles per kilowatt hour, and I have an estimated 96 miles remaining. And We are 24 miles away from where I'm going to cancel this leg of the navigation because I wanted to take 64 all the way to 85. I kind of want to talk about the car a little bit now because we're halfway to the charging station and I feel a little more awake, and hopefully my voice will cooperate with me. So this car reminds me of a lot of different vehicles that I've owned or that I've had experience with. So cars that I've owned that this thing reminds me of: my first gen Honda Insight, my Mazda 5, every fourth generation Volkswagen that I ever owned, which was an awful lot of Beetles, and cars that I didn't own but had an awful lot of experience with: the Nissan Leaf. There are some touches of the BMW i3, and I also feel like there's just kind of a general German-oriented efficiency to the ergonomics of the cabin. So let's kind of talk about that a bit more. The dashboard is very Honda Insight-esque. It uses the little blocks for the power gauge and for the battery gauge, and the Honda Insight did that for power and regen, but this is much cleaner, much more modern. The Honda felt like a really cool 80s digital dashboard. This feels like the same dashboard but done Web 2.0 with CCS. It's just very clean and very modern. The battery meter is basically like a generic version of the one in the Nissan Leaf, and that's very comforting. Like, I don't know, I like it. This car has the violet blue instrument illumination, so all your buttons, instead of being amber or white or red, they're a deep blue, which is very calming on my eyes, especially after I had my LASIK surgery. I really love the the violet blue illumination on all of the buttons in the car, and that's very Mark IV Volkswagen, because the Mark IV Volkswagens all featured that violet blue lighting. In fact, at the time, they were the only car company that had it. It made them very distinctive. Another thing that reminds me of the Insight is this back window. It's got that weird split in it, which most people would probably recognize from the Prius, and I hear a lot of people say it's got kind of a Prius shape, and I think it's got more of like a Honda Insight Generation 2 shape, which I will admit is basically a knockoff of the Prius. But it is a liftback, and it's got that odd split window, and it doesn't bother me. A lot of people don't like it, but I could kind of care less. The interior's material quality is on par with my Mazda 5, which is to say that it'll probably last a lifetime, but it's pretty not sensational. In fact, actually, Car and Driver described the interior of the car as avoiding sensationalism and said the vehicle overall was very inoffensive. And I honestly think that's exactly how I would describe it. It's just a car. I loaned it to a neighbor of mine to run to the store, and she came back and she said, you know, if you didn't know it was an electric car, you wouldn't know it was an electric car. And I'm like, why do you say that? And she said, because it's just a car. She's like, there's nothing really strange or remarkable about it. She's like, it's not as aggressive in its driving style as the BMW, but she's like, it's just a car. And that's kind of what I always come up with whenever I talk about the car. It's just a car. And it's very unassuming. It looks like every other Hyundai out there. The only way you can tell it's electric is it doesn't have the honeycomb grille. It's just a car. So let's see, yeah, we've hit the Mazda, we've hit the Volkswagens, we've hit the Honda Insight. I mentioned the ergonomics feel very German. It does. My friend who drove this car has an Audi, and the infotainment system in her car is laid out very similar to how the infotainment system is laid out in this car, which, by the way, every one of these cars comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay standard, which I love. Another thing that feels very German is this steering wheel. It's got the flat bottom. It's very sporty. It's got the paddle shifters that control your regenerative braking. And from a technical point of view, Volkswagen, I believe, was the first manufacturer to let you actually pick your regeneration level. That might not be true. Actually, it may have been Smart, because I know that the paddle shifters on the electric Smarts also controlled regenerative braking, not quite to the extent that this one does. With those, it was either on, increased, or off. This one, it can be off, low, medium, or high. And I believe the Volkswagens are the same way, the e-Golf and the e-Up. So, very German steering wheel. It's very comfortable. It doesn't have too many buttons on it, but it's easy to navigate. I'm a tall guy. I'm about 6'3". It's very easy for me to reach everything in the cabin. I have decent headroom. I've got excellent visibility. It's a nice car. It's a car, and it's a nice car. You know, I would describe a Camry the same way. That's the level, or that's really the class that this car is in. It's a Camry. It's dependable, it's boring, it's a car. So, but I do like this car. Like, this is the most normal thing I probably have ever owned in my entire life. And I really kind of like it because it just blends in. Alright everybody, I am here in Salisbury. I have just gotten to the charging station, which is not in use. I have traveled 117.1 miles and have an estimated 21 miles remaining, and I have 17% battery power. I have not hit the low battery warning yet, so I'm actually doing really good. We go. All right, I'm going to set the camera up so that you can watch the charge status, and I'm going to go walk down to the Waffle House and get me some breakfast. Okay, my charge is complete. I have 134 miles, which means I added 113 miles in about 35 minutes, and the cost was $7.91. A little bit later I'll do the math on that to compare it with gas prices. But I've done the math, and I spent $7.91 to charge, and the gas station by the highway showed a regular unleaded at $2.44 a gallon. So that means that I could have bought 3.24 gallons of regular unleaded gasoline, and I added 114 miles to my car, so I would need a vehicle that gets at least 35 miles to the gallon to match the operating cost of this car, just in a dollar for dollar, mile for mile sense. That's not bad, if you ask me. I mean, that's really not bad. Okay, I am less than a mile from our destination here in Charlotte. I've driven 30.8 miles and have 112 miles remaining according to the range estimator in the car. My consumption has been 5.3 miles per kilowatt hour. I have traveled a total of 148.8 miles so far. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased, very pleased with this little car. I'm on the road back to Raleigh. The event was very nice. I learned a lot, actually. A lot of people were very interested in the car. And yeah, I mean, it was a good event. Let's see, I've got 42.5 miles on this charge, the charge that we got in Salisbury. We've got 72 miles to Greensboro and 99 miles of range left according to the instrument cluster, and we're hovering around 4.6 to 4.7 miles per kilowatt hour because the meter reset after the car was parked for so long. Pretty certain we'll still get back up to 5.1 or 5.3. But I'm gonna drop off for now. I've got to do some conference calls, and once those are over, hopefully I'll be charging and I'll give a status update there. Talk to you soon. Stacy, can I come over after school? Okay, so last charge stop before I get home. I'm in Greensboro. Car says 11 minutes until it's done charging. And when I pulled in, I saw a Greensboro motorcycle cop doing paperwork on the back of his 0DS Police Edition. So of course, after I got my charge started, I had to go over and talk with Officer Lewis about his electric motorcycle. And by and large, we had a lot of the same complaints and a lot of the same appreciations for the bike. And he told me that they've only got 2 in the fleet now, but they're getting ready to add 4 more to their motor patrol, which I think is really cool. And I'm very excited that Greensboro literally leads the charge in electric vehicle adoption in fleets, both in the motorcycles, in the city-owned vehicles, and also they have the first electric buses in operation in North Carolina. Alright everybody, this trip is done. Traveled 312 miles and some change. Took 6 hours and 32 minutes total time. Had some horrendous traffic on the way home. But this trip is done. It is done. John took the other car out today. So, some stats you probably want to know about. What did it cost to charge? It was 15 bucks and some change. Let me take a look at my phone here. Fairly certain I still got it in the calculator. Yeah, $15.37. So this trip was 7.8 cents per mile. About the same as a 35 mile per gallon car. I'm good with that. If you like it, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.